Welcome to Story Lounge. Imagine this, a maximum security prison on an island in the middle of San Francisco Bay, surrounded by freezing waters, strong currents, and a reputation for being inescapable. But in 1962, three prisoners dared to challenge that impossible reputation. This is the story of how Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers masterminded the most infamous prison break in history, escape from Alcatraz. Welcome to Alcatraz, often referred to as the Rock. It opened as a federal penitentiary in 1934, housing some of the most dangerous criminals in the country. Al Capone, Machine Gun Kelly, and other notorious gangsters all called this place home at one point or another. Its cold cells, strict routine, and isolated location made it nearly impossible to escape. Or so they thought. Let me introduce you to Frank Morris, a man with a brilliant mind and a history of escapes. Born into a life of crime, Morris bounced around various prisons, but his intelligence set him apart. He was described as having an IQ of 133, a certified genius for the criminal world. Then there were John and Clarence Anglin, brothers and skilled bank robbers. These three men, along with another inmate named Alan West, began to hatch a plan to escape from the most secure prison in America. Now, you might be wondering, how on earth could anyone escape from Alcatraz? After all, the place was designed to be escape-proof. The guards were always on high alert, the cells were checked regularly, and there was the icy cold San Francisco Bay to deal with. Well, Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers were determined to give it a shot. It all started in their cells, small, cramped spaces, but full of opportunity if you had enough time, patience, and ingenuity. For months, the men worked on their plan, but they didn't just have to get out of their cells. They had to figure out how to avoid the guards, cross the bay, and survive the treacherous waters. First, they needed to create a hole in the back wall of their cells, big enough to crawl through, but small enough that the guards wouldn't notice. They used spoons. That's right, simple metal spoons. Night after night, they chipped away at the concrete, and because Alcatraz had its own band, the prisoners timed their digging to coincide with music practice so the guards wouldn't hear them. Talk about digging to the beat. The dirt and debris they scraped out, they stuffed it into their pockets and would casually drop it in the yard during their outdoor time. Ingenious, right? But that was just the beginning. Once they created their holes, they crawled into the utility corridor, a space between the prison walls, where they began constructing a raft and life vests. Here's the mind-blowing part. They made their raft out of raincoats. More than 50 of them, stitched together using a makeshift sewing kit. They even built wooden paddles using scraps from around the prison. But they still needed to fool the guards. And this is where things get really creative. The men crafted dummy heads, yes, heads, out of soap, toilet paper, and paint. They even glued human hair, which they collected from the prison barbershop, to make the heads look real. These decoy heads were placed in their beds at night, so when the guards did their checks, it looked like they were sound asleep. Can you imagine the shock the guards must have had when they realized they'd been tricked by soap and toilet paper? Finally, on the night of June 11th, 1962, everything was ready. Under the cover of darkness, Frank Morris, John, and Clarence Anglin slipped through their holes into the utility corridor and made their way to the roof. The fourth member of their team, Alan West, wasn't so lucky. His hole wasn't big enough, and he got stuck, unable to join his fellow escapees. With no time to waste, the others had to leave him behind. They climbed down the outside of the building, avoiding the searchlights, and made their way to the shore, where their makeshift raft waited. The icy waters of San Francisco Bay loomed in front of them, but they were determined. After inflating the raft using a concertina, a type of accordion, the men paddled out into the dark, freezing waters, heading for freedom, and then they vanished. By morning, the escape had been discovered, but the men were gone, along with their raft. The guards, FBI, and local police launched a massive manhunt, scouring the bay and surrounding areas for any sign of the escapees. But despite their efforts, no bodies were found. No definitive evidence ever proved whether they drowned in the cold waters or made it to freedom. For years, the FBI maintained that the men likely drowned. But there were always rumors, sightings of the Anglin brothers in South America, letters sent to family members, and even photographs that supposedly showed them alive. To this day, no one knows for sure what happened to Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers. Did they escape and start new lives far from the rock? Or did they meet their end in the freezing waters of San Francisco Bay? The mystery of the great Alcatraz escape has fascinated people for decades, sparking endless theories and investigations. Whether they made it or not, Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers will forever be remembered as the men who dared to escape the inescapable. What do you think? Could they have survived the treacherous waters and made it to freedom? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible stories from history.